All right, so a couple of months ago, I bought this 2014 Mustang used for really, really cheap. Now, one of the reasons it was really, really cheap is that it had a lot of issues. And I don't mean mechanical issues, I mean aesthetic issues. It had several dents in the paint. It didn't have a radio, and that's kind of the main reason that I enjoy driving so much, is this because I can listen to music while I drive. This one didn't have a radio. It did have the faceplate, which is right here, which even by 2014 standards looks dated. Now, you do have a couple of options for that. So the cheapest option is going to actually be to get this radio right here, which I paid $259 for on eBay. This is actually one of the cheaper of the two packages. You can get one that comes with the backup camera and an external mic. It ends up running you an extra like 75 bucks for that. This one, you can still get those two options, but they do not come with the kit. Now the other option is you can get an aftermarket faceplate with aftermarket HVAC controls, and you can put a double DIN or a single DIN radio that is only up to 7 inches, which a lot of people can do, but it is more expensive than this option, although it does have its own advantages, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Or you can get the $1,000 similar style radio like this, a 10.1 inch screen with Apple Carplay and Android Auto. It is much more expensive, but the audio quality with the audio amplifier in it is a lot better, and it has something else to do with the HVAC controls, which again we'll get more into here in a minute. So really quick, let's get more into what this radio is. Now this radio, like I said, is one of those $250 eBay radios that you can get online that gives you, actually in this case, wireless Android Auto and CarPlay, or wired Android Auto CarPlay. It also gives you the ability for a backup camera. It also gives you ability to be able to talk through it, give it commands and stuff like that, just like any normal Android Auto radio does. In this case, it's Android Auto. This does apply to CarPlay as well. So you can actually see here that with Android Auto connected, you've actually got Maps and Spotify right here, but you can go just to Spotify. That opens up that, and you can play music. Try not to get copyrighted, or you can just open up Maps. You can open up calls, which I'm going to make sure to blur all that out. But there's a couple different things you can do. Android Auto settings. There's also a list of apps you can get on, which are pretty basic. Obviously, they don't want you navigating this while you're on the road. The weather doesn't really do much. This is what I hate about Android Auto.
Yeah, currently in Indianapolis, it's 82 degrees and cloudy.
Today, it just kind of tells you what the weather is, so I'm not really a huge fan of that. But that is just the Android Auto section of it. Now, this is what the main screen actually gives you. This is the non-Android Auto screen. So as you can see, I have the time there. This takes you to the default navigation app, which in this case is Android Auto. And then you have, go back to the menu here. Then you have like a video player, so you can watch your movies on here, your saved music that is saved onto the radio, your other phone, assuming you don't have it connected to Android Auto, and of course the settings, which actually gives you pretty good amount of free reign. And this is an Android radio, so you do have a couple of different options on what exactly you can do on it. So in this case, you can actually see there's a Play Store, there's a browser, you can connect it to a mobile hotspot. You can also download apps straight to it. So I've actually got YouTube, Twitch, and Netflix. Now I don't watch these every single day. Me and my brother took a trip to Georgia. He was watching movies when I was driving, and I was watching Twitch when he was driving. So that is something that's actually really, really cool. It comes with a couple of other things, like built-in GPS is another one. So if I open up that app, I actually had to download the maps onto the GPS, which took a lot of storage, but has absolutely no issue. So this is actually not connected to any form of hotspot. Go ahead and zoom out here. And you can see I have the whole United States downloaded onto this radio. It does not expand to Canada, at least it shouldn't. Yeah, see, no roads there. But I do have the whole United States of America downloaded into here. And this actually works without any form of hotspot or phone connection, which is really, really cool. Now that I've mentioned all the cool things that you can do with it for the price, now reminding you, just to get the aftermarket kit is a couple $100, while this does come with everything. It comes with the harnesses, the wires, the GPS antenna, and if you get the more expensive option, that's $300, it does come up with the backup camera, which does work by default without having to do any custom wiring. It does come with all that if you get the more expensive package. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description below. Now let's talk about the things that you are sacrificing with that price. So one of the things that you are sacrificing with the price of $250 or $300, depending on the package you go, is this HVAC control module. Now, at first, it looks actually pretty decent. But I come to tell you that this power button does nothing. This knob, volume knob looking thing, does nothing. I did make sure to order 4 manual AC and heat, and I still got one that says auto and dual AC, which I don't have either of those things. Those buttons do nothing. There's also no, on the advertisement, it actually says that when you control the buttons, it's supposed to come up on the radio, and it does not. I was able to get it to come up, but it did not reflect what was actually going on down here on the radio. And again, I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the fact that this HVAC module does not actually coincide with what is on my car. Although they do give you a harness for the auto AC, and default, it is not. The harness is the non-auto AC, so I'm not really sure what that's all about. I think it's more of a universal thing. But all of the, like most of these buttons do not work. The temp buttons on the right do not work. The media button does work. The mode button does work, but it doesn't feel like it's consistent on what that button does. Sometimes it changes the blend door mode, sometimes it doesn't. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. It also advertises that it's compatible with your steering wheel controls on your steering wheel. In this case, I could not get them to work no matter what I tried. I did see on the harness there is some tie-ins for the steering wheel controls, but it should tie into the factory harness, and I should not ever have to cut the factory harness. And in this case, it looks like I have to, or at least tie into it. I refuse to do that. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. Now with the aftermarket harness they can get for the single DIN or double DIN or the $1,000 option, all of that works by default, and it is all seamless, and you still get wireless and wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with that option. I'll link a video to the description on that option. I can't afford it. It does fit better as well on that $1,000 option. You can actually see there is some gaps here. I did notice that this is the only place that has those gaps, and the clips don't quite seat in there correctly, so I'm wondering if I might be able to take some of these mid clips out and get it to sit more flush. But so that is another thing. The microphone, absolutely terrible. So when you call somebody, they receive they receive your voice through the built-in microphone that is on this radio, and it is terrible. But again, the more expensive option does come with an external mic that you can route somewhere else, and it sounds miles better. Another thing is that Android Auto is seemingly inconsistent on when it wants to work. That being said, it seemed to be an issue with specifically my phone. It has nothing to do with the radio itself. I have had a 100% success rate with CarPlay and other people's phones that are Android, and they have had not a problem working at all. Here recently, oddly enough, after a couple months leading up to making this video, Android Auto seems to work way better now than it used to, which is completely weird. I don't know why it's like that. It seems like it just started working. I did update the radio software and I did update my phone software, so maybe that had something to do with it, but I don't know for sure. But it has been way more consistent working. As far as the speed of the radio, there's a couple things that are concerning when you buy eBay radios, and that's the screen quality, which by the way is phenomenal. Like, it is surprisingly bright even in the day. Like, this is midday, full sun out. It is very bright. It is even too bright in the night. And speaking of night, whenever you do get into that, you can swipe down just like a regular phone. Screen off, turns off the screen, doesn't blind you at night. I do that often because it is pretty bright even on the lowest brightness setting. So right now I think I've got it on like a mid brightness setting. Actually, I have it on full brightness right now. And then the speed. The speed is another thing that I was worried about when getting an eBay radio, because they're really cheap. So the fact that it is this responsive, although I'm not very good at clicking things, the fact that it's this responsive is actually really impressive. Now, Netflix, Twitch, and YouTube, all three of those are actually kind of intermittent on how fast they do work. But I do realize that I do leave most of my apps up. Like, Netflix is still up from when I watched it a month ago when my brother was driving. They stay up all the time. But I'll go ahead and actually pull something up real fast so you can kind of see the speed of Netflix. It's got to reload because it's been in the RAM for too long. I'm actually not connected. I just realized I'm not connected to my hotspot because I have Android Auto connected. But you kind of get the point. It operates pretty fast overall. Faster than, I just closed Android Auto. Faster than most. This is actually a good example to see how fast the Android Auto comes up and if it's going to work. So let's see here, connecting. And I believe this is an aftermarket app, by the way. Really fast. It didn't used to do that. I don't know why it's suddenly starting to work now. I seem to be the only person with that issue. But like I said, for an eBay radio that's 250 bucks, that's really, really good. Now, comparing it to the step up, so getting an aftermarket bezel with the aftermarket HVAC controls and getting a separate radio. Now, the disadvantages is that it's more expensive and that you don't typically get as big of a screen. You're usually limited to about a 7-inch screen on the double DIN aftermarket Android radios. Even if you went aftermarket, you don't get as big of a screen. It is more expensive to set it up that way. Plus, you got to get the aftermarket harness, wire it yourself. While this comes all pre-wired for this car. I have seen these options in other cars, and they come pre-wired as well. Just have to order it for your specific year, make, and model. And then again, on the HVAC controls, the advantage to going to the more expensive option, actually both expensive options, is that you do get a more consistent, tailored to you HVAC control center. And I keep bringing this up because there is no indication on what the HVAC controls are. You have no indication on your fan level, whether or not your AC is on, what mode your blend doors are on, and even if you have front defrost. So none of that stuff is it doesn't give you an indication at all. It has little indicators here, but they just don't work. I don't know if that's by design or if they're meant to look like they work, but again, you are sacrificing that going with the cheaper option. The more expensive options, it's a lot more tailored to your vehicle. Same thing with the $1,000 radio. You get a lot better amp, you get better HVAC controls that actually look a lot nicer too. This looks very cheap. The radio looks fantastic, but this looks very cheap. So you kind of have your pros and cons with that. I didn't have enough money to go with either of the other two options. I saw this option. I took a risk, and I'm actually really happy I did so. So at the end of the day, was it worth it? Personally, I think so. Considering I didn't have a radio, like I had the faceplate there. I had this faceplate installed in the vehicle, but if you know anything about these cars, there's a separate radio module that's supposed to connect to this, and it was just gone when I bought the car. I really hate that, but it is what it is. So I did order that one, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm really happy with it. I really wish that they had a more factory fit, or maybe you could somehow get this on that board, but I couldn't figure it out because this is all integrated into one piece. So anyway, considering what I had, it was definitely worth it. If I had the extra money, I would absolutely go with the $1,000 10.1 inch matte screen, by the way, because this is very reflective. I can see perfectly fine, but it is pretty reflective, pretty distracting. The $1,000 option does come with a matte finish on the screen, so it's really good at anti-glare, and it just looks overall better in the vehicle. So if I had the extra money, I definitely would do it. But considering what I had, doing it on a budget, this is really, really good. Wireless Android Auto and CarPlay for under $300 is something that's actually really hard to come by. So I think it's personally really, really worth it. I highly recommend it if you don't have any other options. Obviously, I would recommend the $1,000 option if you can afford it. But in my opinion, this is plenty for what I had. So if you guys like this video, thank you for watching. I do hope that you tune in the next time. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Give me a dislike if you didn't like it, and tell me what I can improve on. I will see you in the next one.